guys are doing a bunch of work up in the attic. It's the sanctuary that's going. Oh, man! You got it on record? Yep, it's recording. Oh, man. I hope they got insurance, man. That thing is roaring. The whole thing. The whole thing. I talked to a couple of the carpenters, and they said it was they were hooking up one of the furnaces, and the propane was leaking, and it blew up in the attic on that other side. Oh man, I can't believe it. Weyerhaeuser sending a helicopter over.
It looked more like a forest fire Thursday morning as helicopter crews worked desperately to save the brand new church. The congregation had planned to move in this August, but construction crews left open a propane valve. Gas ran into a furnace, and the building exploded into flames. With the nearest water 2 miles away, the $2.8 million building burned nearly to the foundation. Today, church members returned to survey the damage.
It was a real work of joy and love that we did.
I'm so tempted to want to go peep in a window and all of that.
Bob Reiswig is in charge of the church building fund.
It looks like a bombed-out building that you might see in East Berlin right after the war, but it actually does. It looks like a bombed-out area, but it just is just so different than the beautiful impression it was becoming.
No one wanted this site 10 years ago, but the Chehalis Seventh-day Adventist Church bought it and spent 4,000 hours improving the lot and building the church. They came so close. The carpet had just been ordered. The sanctuary had just been painted.
So it was in 2 hours just a destroying of that thing, and it was a helpless feeling that it's hard to describe.
Today, the congregation gathered in their old church and gave thanks that no one was hurt. Thankful for the outpouring of support from the community.
So much good comes in revealing the basic goodness that is inside of the human heart.
So again, as it had for the past 10 years, the church passed a collection plate with a new church in mind.
Before it was destroyed, they got to see how beautiful it was turning out to be.
Bob and Laverne Reiswig say the pain of this fire is the same as when they lost their young son in a car accident 8 years ago. The pain is the same, but they're thankful here they can rebuild. In Chehalis, Todd Pottinger, Carver News Channel 7.
What do you do when 10 years of planning and 11 months of work are wiped out in 1 hour? Most of the 290 members of the Chehalis Seventh-day Adventist Church had spent months working on their dream building. A pastor reminds them that the dream is not in ashes.
Fire can destroy a lot of things, but it can't destroy love. It can't destroy unity.
This is what firefighters saw as they arrived at the new church at just after 9 a.m., a 25,000-square-foot building engulfed in flames. Watch here as the roof collapses into the inferno.
A big structure, huge structure like that, and to have it just totally involved that quick is kind of amazing.
Miraculously, 12 construction workers managed to escape without a scratch. 17 fire departments are now on the scene, but this church is on a rural road. The only source of water is tanker trucks. There are no hydrants. Officials believe a leak during the installation of a propane heating system led to the blaze. Congregation members watch in shock as flames consume their future.
It just feels almost like a death because, you know, we've dreamed it, we've worked it.
But tonight, the congregation gives thanks that no one was seriously injured because a building can be replaced, a life cannot.
The Lord has shown so many miracles in the building of this that He's going to continue to bless us
The congregation had hoped to move into their new church in August. Instead, beginning Friday morning, they'll be rooting through the rubble, trying to salvage whatever's left, with the knowledge that their greatest salvation is the promise that they will rebuild. In Chehalis, Bill Prasad, King 5 News.
joy, joy, joy down in my heart, down in my heart to stay. I've got the peace that passes understanding down in my heart, down in my heart, down in my heart. I've got the peace that passes understanding down in my heart, down in my heart to stay. My Savior down in my heart, down in my heart, down in my heart. I've got the victory of Christ my Savior down in my heart, down in my heart to stay.
Forever, forever, Thank you, Bob and Earlene. Quite a trip down memory lane, quite a bit of emotion there. Almost too fast to absorb, but I had the thought maybe we should have named our church the Phoenix Church. But could we have the screen up? We have another part of our program this afternoon. This is going to be audience participation, where you can ask some questions of people that know everything. And one of them is Earlene. She has seen everything through the eye of a camera. And we're going to have Bob Reiswig come forward too. He has been here for most of those 100 years also, just 44. So he knows. And then there's another person I want to talk about. You know, a church family, like any family, is made up of unique individuals. Some of them are more unique than others. We have one such person in our congregation, and you may have noticed him. As he walks around the church, he may grab a handrail and shake it, or a door jamb, slam it just to see what it's like, checking the doorknobs, turning lights on and off, feeling surfaces, just to see if they're there. Some of you may know who this. Danny and Craig, you kind of have an idea who this is? No idea. It's dear old dad, Bill Hammond. And as these chairs come forward, you might have even seen him in his younger years as we're checking out chairs for this hall here. You could see him stand on one and jump up and down just to see if it'll take the strain. This has not all been in vain. It's been with good purpose. Bill has been of good service to our church. He served on the building committee as chairman. It's always well to have a chairman of the building committee. You know, if anything goes wrong, you have somebody to blame. But things didn't go wrong. Things went very well. And that is because this man is a bulldog on a project. He knows who to call. He knows codes. He knows how to get things done. I don't know how many meetings I've been at where we're talking about a maintenance item, and somebody will say, well, let's ask Bill Hammond what he thinks of this. Bill, if you turned in an invoice for all you've done for us, you would bankrupt us. And we can't pay you, but your service is not going unnoticed or unappreciated. And this may sound like a retirement party, but it isn't. You're here for the duration. And I think let's just give Bill a hand. And now we're going to work you a little more. You're on the panel too. If you have questions, let us know. We'll have a microphone here for you. Is there a agile young man in the audience that could take this around? Or somebody named Andrew, maybe? You want to handle the mic?
Take it off. We're not sure about this, are we? Pardon? While you're thinking about questions, all those good remarks about me, but our friend Tex Laddish, where's Tex? Oh, he was the very best coordinator, site superintendent I've ever worked with in 40 years. And every time I go back in the library and see all those 3-ring binders that he and Ividel and Len put together, I can find any construction invoice, I can see his original notes, and I can actually see how to solve the problem. And I appreciate Tex so much, and I've thought about him hundreds of times. If I ever had to do another project, it would be so nice to have him on board also. So let's give Tex a big hand. Well, I was, during the slide program, I was thinking about some of the miracles that happened during the construction project and before. And I'd just like to take a minute, I was just jotting some notes down. The purchase of the land was a miracle. It was for sale, and they were going to build 5 or 6 or 7 houses up on this site. They couldn't get the permits for the septic tanks. They could only get 2 permits. So that brought the land back on the market for sale. And Gary Ellis, is Gary still here? Where's Gary? Okay, I was talking with Gary this morning, and I thought we bought the land for $20,000. That was the listing price. And Joyce Barnes was the realtor that helped us. I think many of you know Joyce Barnes. Where's Joyce? Good to see you. And Joyce was able to negotiate the price, and when she came back with the price, she said it's $12,000 to the Adventist Church. So we bought 7.4 acres for $12,000. That was a miracle. Thank you, Joyce, and thank you, Gary. I can remember standing someplace up where there were stumps and trees and all kinds of hills, and of course, a lot of the people said, you can't build a church up there. And it took us 10 years to decide about building on this church. There was a land search committee that got activated. It went for 4 or 5 years, and we looked at 29 different land spots, according to my old notes here. And then later, we had another land search committee because they wanted it on a different flat land someplace. And so after 10 years, it was finally voted to go ahead and build on this site because it was such a visual site from Highway 6. It was up on the hill. And we paid a dear price. Some of the sites that we looked at were $500,000 or $750,000 just for the land out near Rochester and out south of town. So we came back and we started doing the planning for the site. And 9 years afterwards, the site, we started working on that site. 9 years after we bought the land, which was in 1984, and we got the engineering plans done, and we started doing that construction. Mark Suiso from Suiso Construction did all the site work. And you know, it only cost $60,000 back those days. And we moved over 60,000 cubic yards of dirt to get our space here. But when you buy your land for $12,000, you can afford to spend $60,000 on the site work. And then the next year we started building the church. And I think that the land purchase was a miracle. Getting the water from Boisford was a miracle. We actually got 2 water shares from Boisford Water. And if our church would have been much bigger, we wouldn't have been able to have enough water capacity from the Boisford to do this church. So that, I believe, was a miracle. And the site work was a miracle. Nobody got hurt except one time they rolled that compactor down over the hill, but she didn't get, there was a lady running it, she didn't get injured. And I think another miracle after the church fire, the insurance and the reconstruction. I remember the Lewis County Fire Marshal, Chuck Haycock was his name. And we were talking, and I think Bob was there too. And he said, Bill, this is going to take 3 to 6 months for the investigation. And you know, this was when the church burned at May 4, caught fire. You know, May is kind of the at the end of the summer. And I told Chuck, I says, Chuck, you can't take 6 months. You can't take 3 months. We'll only give you 30 days. And he looked at me and he kind of, what? You can't tell us what to do. I says, Chuck, we want to rebuild this church and get it started before the winter time. So we had the fire on May 4 and June 19 is when the rebuild started. So it was a little over a month. And I firmly believe that that was a miracle. Yeah. And getting the insurance from Gen Con, we got enough money out of the project to finish the church. And we were on budget, and we were, really, it only took, Tex, what it take 9 months to build the church afterwards? And it went really fast. And all the construction people and all the church members you saw in the movie. I mean, we actually framed this whole upstairs in one day. In one day. I remember that. So it was a really work of love and art and working together. And the building committee, which was made up of Tex Laddish and the pastor Larry McCombs, Mark and Linda Ropka, Jeannie Nygaard, Dick Fleming, and I was on it, yeah, that doesn't count. But they were such a pleasure to work with. And then you had the decorating committee. Usually there's scrabbling going on with the decorating committee, but it was not this way. And it was such a pleasure to work with everybody. And I didn't mean to take up all the time here. And then the piano was the miracle, getting the piano from Kobe, Japan. And getting the church organ from Texas. I believe it was from Texas, Dr. Haydar. It was a Methodist church. San Antonio, Texas. Getting that here. And we thought about storing it in the church. But we decided to store it off premises or it would have been burned up too. And it was just a miracle of all these many, many things that happened. So if you have any questions, here's the committee.
Bob, I wonder if you would kind of give us a rundown on how the finances were, if you remember how much we had to start with, and you don't. You have an idea on that.
It was kind of strange, you know, it seemed like our church is so different and it's one of a kind. And I don't remember all the details, but I know that we had some seed money that started and we got enough money to do the, we did a study from Kirkshaw and Collins. I remember that cost $10,000 to either build on this site or remodel the old church or build on a flat church, or flat land for the church. I remember, and that came in, and it was a big, thick study, and it basically told us the pros and the cons about building here or remodeling the old church or building on a piece of flat ground. And then I remember we had a company come in. What was the name of that man?
For the fundraising?
For helping us fundraise. And I don't know whether he helped a lot or not, but it seemed to get us pulled together and the money started coming in. And we got enough money so we could start working on the plans, and we chose Russ Hassey, he's an architect, an Adventist architect. And we got the plans, you know, we had to get the civil work done first. And the civil plans so we could get the site work done. And so that went first, and we had an idea of what we wanted to do for the church. And then the bad news was, when we went out to bids, it came in $1.2 million higher than what we budgeted as $2.8 million. So we had to do some changes. This fellowship hall was much bigger this way. It actually went out that way. The lobby was twice the size. We had a music and choir room back behind where the flower department is, and that went. And we also took out the elevator. So we shaved off $1.2 million in cost. And so we could afford it. And that's what we built it for. And that was around $83 a square foot for hard cost construction, which is a very good bargain. You couldn't begin to build that. And the only thing that we did different in the rebuild was this ceiling here was a flat ceiling before, and then we raised it up and put scissor trusses up there and did the design similar to what it was downstairs. But and paying the church off was a miracle too, and it just seemed to work. And I want to say something about our school. The same situation on that. When we had our meeting up there, we needed $100,000 to get the architectural plan started. And by the end of that constituency meeting, we had $100,000 given to us. So we could start that school project up there. And there were numbers of miracles up there too. So.
I can't miss an opportunity to add to what Mark was talking about. I had never been on a committee that dealt with so many difficult decisions and was able to see how some real experts handled it. I tell you, I learned a lot. Watching Tex Ladish and Bill and the organized way they approach things was just astounding to me. I was able to learn an awful lot about how to get organized. And not only that, but the atmosphere in the committee was really remarkable. We had differences in opinion, sure, but I was amazed at how no one really became a stumbling block. Everyone cooperated and everyone pitched in, and it was just truly amazing. Now, as far as the fundraising, one day I met with Pastor Joe Nixon, Ella's dad, and I said, we're going to approach getting money for a new building. And I want you to tell me what are some of the secrets. And he's been through that. So he said, well, Bob, he says, let me tell you. He says, there's going to be an initial swell of enthusiasm, and then there's going to be a dip. And then you have to try to raise that up again. And he says, you'll go through these waves of highlight and then low light. So I was prepared for that. And because of all the cooperation of all of you, we managed to get through the low times. And I was just really impressed with the fact that even those who told us at the beginning, this is not going to work. I had quite a few influential people tell me, it's not going to work. But in spite of that, even those who said it's not going to work pitched in, and everybody cooperated. So I was amazed at the atmosphere and the dedication of this congregation.
Are we getting worn out? One of the studies we did to decide whether to stay at our old location or move was people were concerned that if we would be downtown, it would give the opportunity for people to walk to church. when we did a survey, we found we had one teenage boy that walked to church. Everybody else was grown. And so that was settled quickly. Are there any other questions? If not, I believe we have. You do. Okay. We have a song. I won't keep. Good thought to end with. Before we have closing remarks and closing prayer by Phil Becker, I want to call attention to the fact that if you've had a good day, and it has been a marvelous day, I think we need to thank Pam Burghart. She put this all together.
I'd like to second what Mark just said. There were a few of us that worked on a committee, but it was Pam who made it all happen. Are we looking forward to meeting at Jesus' feet? Amen. You know, all of us that are here will probably never be together again quite like this until we do meet at Jesus' feet. Oh, I'm looking forward to that time. There are things that happen in our life that we don't have an explanation for. I didn't hear an explanation as to why God permitted this church to burn down. We know what caused it, yes. But why did God permit it? Sometimes we just don't have explanations. I had something happen in my life this last summer that I don't have an explanation for. But talking about the miracles, the things that have happened, God gives us evidences in our life, if we have our eyes open, that we know He does what's best for us. Amen. I don't know why the church burned, but yet we're here. I watched it from the service station over here. There was a guy that drove up. I don't know who he was, somebody in the community, and he stood there looking at it, and he said, "Now there's a church that's on fire." And I have hope that, you know, we are on fire in the spiritual sense. That we are being a light in this community, not just smoke. So, yeah, I want to thank you, church family, for the time we have been able to work together, we've spent together, we've raised kids together, and now we have grandkids, and, well, some of us do. Some of you are still raising kids, but it's been a real blessing being part of this church. Let's pray. Father, again, we thank you for the way you have led this church here in this community. Thank you that we can work together, we can sing together, we can pray together, that we can go through life together, and that eventually we are going to meet together at your feet. Looking forward to that time. And as the world kind of unfolds around us, oh, Father, press us ever closer together. And now as we go our way, we seek your blessing with each of us, each of our families, and may we continue to be a light here on the hill, a light for you, a light that spreads, that chases the darkness away. So do bless us, Father, with your presence, with your love in our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. This concludes the program. You're welcome to stay and visit some more. I'm sure there's still some untold stories that need to be told. It's so good to see many of you that have traveled a ways to be here. God be with you till we meet again.